Hello, everyone, and welcome to Cellular Healing TV. I'm your host, Meredith Dykstra, and we have Dr. Pompa here on the line, of course. And today we're welcoming a very special guest, not a guest, a guest. And we have Kim Emmerich here. She is one of Dr. Pompa's clients, and she's going to be sharing her testimonial today on where she's been, where she is now, and she really has an incredible story, and Dr. Pompa wanted her to come on to Cellular Healing TV to share. So before we get started, let me tell you a little bit more about Kim. So Kim Emmerich is currently a stay-at-home mom who is in the process of regaining her health without the use of any medications after a decade-long journey with Hashimoto's. Kim has spent several years of her life around the sick and dying, working in the past as a lab tech, ER tech, and EEG tech. She's run in-house laboratories for private practice doctors in an inner-city hospital emergency room. She provided patient care at one of the largest epilepsy monitoring clinics in the world. In addition, she's volunteered her time helping to launch and operate remote jungle medical clinics in the Caribbean, South America, and Papua New Guinea. Most recently, Kim lost her mother after a long battle with poor health. Her mother fought relentlessly and outlived her prognosis by 16 years. She became lovingly known as the Energizer Bunny. Kim truly believes her mother would be alive today if more time was spent searching for root causes of her illness and removing the source. Kim believes that both traditional and alternative doctors and researchers all have an important and special role to play in assisting and helping people achieve optimal health, but firmly believes that as individuals, we are ultimately responsible for our own health. It is our job to ask questions, to educate ourselves, to find root causes, and choose our own path to healing. She believes that if you continuously seek, God will always open up new doors and lead you down sure pathways to improve health and even cure so-called incurable diseases. So welcome, Kim. Thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you.
Yeah, well, Kim, I thank you so much because, you know, I've asked so many of my clients to come on and tell their story, and so few do. I'm going to be honest with you because it's scary, right? It's like, oh my gosh, on the show that they watch to be on, so you're scared because everyone is, right? But there's, you know, we always say there's nothing to be afraid of. It's just a conversation, you know. But I believe, you know, it's our God duty to tell our story. You know, when we look, you know, at biblical, you know, times, people told their stories, and that's how people learned, right? You know, Jesus taught in stories. It's our story that transformed the world. We can tell all the facts, we can tell all the science, but ultimately my story has changed more lives, you know, than really any of the facts and amazing shows that we do, really. I mean, it is our story that gives us the purpose, you know, and it's not by chance that you're a world changer just listening to that little bio there. You know, you're doing amazing things because, you know, I always tell the doctors that I coach, look for your purpose in your pain. And so too to you. I'm sure if you looked at your life and said, gosh, look where God, you know, brought me from to where I am now, you know, there is amazing purpose and you wouldn't be the woman that you are. So thank you for being on this show. Thank you for having me. You're welcome. And, you know, I just, you know, pulled up and I just looked at a brief history that I remember getting day one when we, I can't say sat down like this. But, you know, I mean, you said in this notes that it all started like around 2000, and I'll let you reiterate on that. You were diagnosed with an autoimmune condition at that time, postpartum depression after having a baby. And by the way, I remember your lead test. You had high lead, which often comes out of pregnancies. So the lead pours out of the bones, and we see this symptom change after pregnancy. We see autoimmune oftentimes develop after pregnancies. So no surprise there to me. In 2002, you were diagnosed with Epstein-Barr. You were had major energy depletion, joint pain, mood swings, depression, heart palpitations, insomnia, PCOS, fibroids, cystic breast, heavy chest, hard to breathe, thin skin, bald spots. 2004, joint pain started. You had chronic joint pain, tendonitis, neck, shoulders pain, back. Somewhere in that time, your thyroid malfunction, increase in TSH, autoimmune thyroid, where your antibodies were up, thyroiditis, inflammation. They showed your thyroid. You had a goiter. Basically, your thyroid was growing. So all of these things, I'll let you reiterate on, but you're a different woman today.
I am.
Changing the world. So tell us your story.
That's really funny you mentioned about the goiter. This, you probably can't see this little necklace that I'm wearing. I bought this, I think it was 3 years ago now. It was the day before Mother's Day, and my husband took me out to this place. We kind of got this as a Mother's Day gift, and on our way home got a phone call that my stepfather had suddenly passed away, and my mother was just 2 days, coming out of a diabetic coma.
Wow.
And so she wakes up and finds out that her husband had shot himself. And so I couldn't wear this necklace. My goiter got so big
Wow.
that I was unable to wear it. And I'm wearing it today. And I'm really pleased that I get to wear it now. And,
wow, that's a good visual because people don't understand the thyroid literally can grow to that big. I mean, I can visually even see now. I mean, how big that would be.
Yeah, and so I mean, it wasn't huge or anything, but tight enough that I wouldn't want to wear a necklace like this. And so, yeah, I mean, I grew up pretty healthy. I mean, I was young and active, never had issues with weight, never. And it was, I mean, I really feel like the bottom fell out after I gave birth to my son.
Yeah.
I did everything that they told me to do in pregnancy, and I had a hearty, wonderful pregnancy, got very big. I delivered a fairly large baby, especially for my size, and being here in Colorado, I think the average birth weight is around, 6.5 to 7 pounds, just because of the lack of oxygen in the air. I had almost a 9-pound baby. And instantly after I delivered this ginormous child, I mean, Raynaud's disease of the nipples, it just immediately started in, and really from that time on, I struggled, and tried many different things, and I never like the whole, pathway, take this drug, do that. I just somehow innately I knew that was not gonna. I would always say I'm a questioner. Why is my thyroid malfunctioning? Oh, here, just take this Synthroid. And if you had a really nice doctor, they'd say, okay, well, here's Armour instead. But why does this happen? And they don't really have an answer. Well, it just happens. There's no cure for it, and you're going to have to take this pill for the rest of your life. And I just was not okay with that. And you turn on your television and you see these commercials about all these drugs, and they say, oh, by the way, they show everybody having the time of their lives, and they say, but you might fall down of sudden cardiac death, but that's okay. I'm like, I'm not okay with that.
Yeah, right. I know. No doubt about it.
And
I remember. Go ahead. Finish.
No, I was just going to say when I turned from, well, so it's kind of like the turning point for me away from the whole conventional thing, where I just thought I've got to close the door on this for a while, was after I had tendonitis so bad in my shoulder. It destroyed the tendon, and I was so desperate I decided to have the surgery done. Interestingly enough, after the surgery was done, I was in more pain than I was before I had the surgery, and it ended up being frozen. I couldn't even move it anymore, and I resorted to taking narcotic drugs just to take the edge off of the pain. And then I knew that, oh my gosh, here I would be faced with the possibility of becoming addicted to, pain medications. And that's when I met my chiropractor, who eventually then referred me to you. And it's interesting because in my chiropractic journey, several times over, a few years, he said, Kim, I really think you've got heavy metal issues. But I was the only one in his office who could pass that VCS test. Mm-hmm. That visual screening for that, and so in my mind I just sort of dismissed it. But it's interesting because that seems to be what the problem what the root cause was.
Yeah, when I looked at your history, and just some things I've jotted down, you grew up and you had remodeled homes, or at least you grew up in some homes that would be remodeled. I remember in my notes, I'm looking at it now, I said, need urine toxic metal test, lead. So I suspected lead just from your history alone. Remodeled homes, lived in old homes, and here's another thing, I suspected mercury in the brain. You wore contact lenses from 1978 to the present. Guess who else did that? Me. Yeah, so, I had, obviously I had fillings. I think you had a filling removed. You had several in the past, right?
I only had one.
Oh, I had one, okay.
Yeah.
Oh, I had one. So then you had that removed, and you wore the contact lenses like I did through the 70s, 80s, and early 90s, loaded with mercury. So brain mercury, and I told you that probably won't show up in the test, but I'm thinking the lead will. It did. So just looking at your history, how you got things changed after the pregnancy, we grew up in the lead generation, in the mercury generation. And the problem is that it's deep in those tissues. As looking at my notes, as we went through the detox, that goiter kept shrinking and shrinking and shrinking. And I remember you telling me, my goiter is shrinking. And then there would be times where it kind of increase again, then it would shrink again, and I can't even see a goiter there today. But yeah, to fix hormone problems, which you had, to fix aches and pains, which you had, really is impossible without getting to the upstream cause. So yeah, you tried a lot of things. You did a lot of things which were really good and helped you, I'm sure, even. But ultimately, until we got to that, we weren't going to get you to where you are today. And Kim, as a reminder, because this is something that, I went through. Once certain aspects of my life were better again, number one, we forget where we were. Number two, you will go through times that lead and even mercury will come out. And all of a sudden, we revisit certain things or new things even crop up. I went through that for years. I always say 7 years, probably, I went through those episodes. I just wanted to be done detoxing. I just wanted to be able to make more exceptions. Maybe people say live life normally, right? Which I believe I'm living life normally now. But I don't know what we mean by that, but I guess live life like everybody else that got, how we got sick. However, I would revisit some of those things because the metals would just come out at random. As we age, we lose bone, and out come different lead can come from the deep bone. Even stuff will mobilize even from the deep tissues in our nerve tissue, like the brain, and will come out. And I became better at understanding what was going on and knowing that, okay, I just needed a cycle. Right now you're still cycling. We took you through the prep phase, we took you through a body phase, we took you into the brain phase. It's where you are now. I do want you to share kind of, because that was a journey, right? I remember diarrhea happening with ALA, and I remember this happening, and just different things, So I don't know. Think back through that journey and just kind of, what are some of the dietary changes? We now intermittent fast. I remember a time where you couldn't go without food, right? So that's many people watching this show that we talk about intermittent fasting, and they go, I can't go without food. That was you. So talk a little bit about there. Start right there.
Yeah, it's not an easy journey, as all of us who've been through it can testify to that. But boy, I just tell you, if you do it, people would tell me in this journey, Kim, you have so much discipline. You're such a disciplined person. You can do this. You can do the fasts. You can, do this and that. And I'd say, no, I don't really consider myself to be very disciplined at all. But I do consider myself to be very determined. I was very determined to, get to the bottom of the issue, fix it, and then, get the health back and be on my way back up. And, it was interesting to me as you had me do, like if I couldn't fast, you would have me do certain things, and it's like, wow, now I can fast. I was doing so many good things before, like even with diet. I had cleaned up my diet pretty well a few years before I met you. And so a few years before I met you, when I made some of these dietary changes, I cut out wheat and several other grains. I thought I was going to die. I thought, that's it. I mean, eating is my social life. Eating, I just, I'd go to restaurants, I'd sit there, not eat, and just struggle the whole time, like, why can't I be normal like everybody else around me? And I'm looking, and I mean, if I'm now to the place where I can sit at a restaurant and look at what everybody else is eating, and kind of go, ooh, I don't want that anymore. And but it takes a while. It also takes a really good family to kind of walk through you with it. And I even remember more towards the beginning. I mean, my husband is, has blessed us by being able to, just financially provide the means for us to try a bunch of different things. And so for that, I'm very grateful. And he would even do it even when he wasn't sure whether or not it was going to make a difference or not.
That's hard.
And nobody likes to waste money, and so I think over time he could see that I was getting better. I think for me, like the mood swings, I wasn't agitated all the time. Yeah. I wasn't depressed all the time, and I knew in my head, I'm like, there may not be anything to be agitated or depressed about. I just couldn't seem to control it. And so as the journey went on with you, I'm like, wow, I actually feel pretty happy today. I can tell people when they say, how you doing today? I can say, I'm doing awesome. I feel great today.
Yeah, it's funny, as you just said that, I looked down, and this was, probably 7 months into me coaching you, and it was the third brain phase, okay? And you said, much less severe hot flashes. Yeah, that's it. Then, excess hair loss was less. So, your hair wasn't falling out as much. But you said right there, still some mood swings, tiredness at the beginning of each cycle, but got better. Less brain fog, but better mood in general, not as angry anymore. And you had more stress than ever at that point. So that's what I wrote down. So you had more stress, but yet you were tolerating the stress better. And that was after 3 brain cycles. So.
Yeah, that was a really good test when the stress doesn't stop. And I mean, I told Meredith a few things, maybe a few things about me, but like during this whole journey with my health, we have just had, my counselor calls it chronic PTSD. We've had several tragedies in our family, and I'll never forget returning home from, just being, it was after I couldn't wear the necklace. I had left my family to go take care of my mother, who eventually died, and I really feel like that was the mercy of God, but she was ready to go. So no regrets there, but, I left my family for an undetermined amount of time to make sure my mother was taken care of after her husband had passed away. And forgot where I was exactly going with that. So I come back home, and I just, the stress was just so high. I mean, you have to manage your family and the relationships there. Marriages get stressed. Kids are like, I have an adopted daughter from China, and, I just left her for 2 months, and she doesn't know when mommy's coming home and all of that. And so when I get home, my counselor said, you know what? This is after the second suicide in the family. Things are going to get better. And the next week, my husband broke his neck in a bicycling accident. So I'm like, okay, but what I could see is that, as I got better, when those kinds of stressful situations would come, I could actually handle them. I actually felt like I had the ability somewhere inside to reach down deep, to just know, God, things are going to be okay. And, and then I would actually be able to walk through some of those horrible situations and not freak out and not slip into deep depression, not get so angry that I just can't function and I'm yelling at my children. Of course, if they listen to this, they'll say, yeah, right, Mom. But it is true. I do think that, my family is definitely seeing great changes. One of the things I love now, I can dream again. When you go through such a long period of time of, having no direction and not knowing where to go with your health, and you just kind of getting worse and worse, you just don't feel, you start losing your dreams. You start forgetting why you're even here on this earth, or you forget about what energizes you, and those activities that you love to do, and you stop doing them, and you don't even know what you like anymore. And the most beautiful thing out of this process, I'm like, I don't care about diarrhea. If I can like feel good about the day and my life and what's going on, and handle the stress, boy, that's huge.
Yeah, no, it is. You know, and you said it right too. It's like when I was sick, I couldn't handle any stress. I couldn't even handle loud noise, a crying child. You know,
Yeah.
and let alone anything too emotional. You know, it's like we know the emotional stuff in our life is huge, right? But it's like when you're healthy, you can adapt to it, and it doesn't sap you down. You know, it's getting the stress out, this chronic stress of toxins in our nerve system. That's what kept me from adapting. You too, right? It's like that's when once that started coming out, you know, then we were realizing, you know, gosh, I can handle it. You know, we all have stress, but it's like unloading that bucket of chemical stress allows us to deal with the emotional stress, you know, so much easier. You know, and get a handle on it. I watched you go through that, you know, and then hormones, right? So many people focus on different hormones, this hormone thing, that hormone thing, but you know, your hot flashes got better as the detox went forward.
Yeah.
You know, I forget how many hot flashes you would have, but they were severe.
Yeah, I would have them like all through the night. Every 30 minutes, I would just be drenched in sweat, and I thought, I was never understanding, you know, like I was thinking, you know, the whole menopause thing, like, wow, ladies never really said it was this bad, but this was different. It was like every 30 minutes, just profuse sweating, and the further, I mean, and I'll still kind of go back to those, and I'll get them. And it's interesting now because as I've gone on this journey, I know exactly in the cycles when they're going to be worse and when they're going to get better. And like, for example, just last week, they completely dropped off. They're gone. They're gone, and I'm feeling fantastic. So there's a cycle to it, too.
Yeah. Toxin related, you know. How do you feel? I mean, you know, I know in the beginning, you know, it's very typical to feel worse on an on cycle, but did you cross over to where you feel better on cycles? Like, what's the difference of on cycles? And for those watching that don't know what we're talking about on a detox cycle. So when I say brain phase, that's a detox cycle where we're, you know, detoxing the deeper tissues like the brain.
Well, I do know at the beginning, like whenever I would be out, like in public in general, let's just say I'm playing tennis. In the beginning, people could tell something was going on with me, and sometimes I would just explain to them, you know, just briefly what I was doing, and I would get like kind of brain gaps or something. I just would sort of forget like where I was supposed to stand, and I still get that once in a while. But yeah, like at the beginning of each cycle, I would feel good, and then towards the end of the cycle, I would start feeling really bad. And it has changed over time. And sometimes I have to go through a few cycles to kind of figure out what exactly is going on. I can honestly say I just finished a cycle, an on cycle. I felt fantastic through the whole thing.
Yeah.
I didn't even feel like I needed to go off of it, whereas before it was like, okay, my body needs a break. It's been working really hard. You know, there would be times like around day 4, and my family knows I never do this. They come home, I'm laying on the couch, and I can't even get up.
Yeah.
You know, I needed a nap, and I never do that. And so some of those days are gone. I don't ever get that fatigued or that tired, and life feels more normal.
Yeah.
You know, once in a while, you know, things will cycle around, and I know it's just all part of the healing process. Sometimes I can tell my body is dumping more toxins, like I'm not sure why it did that, but it does it. The body's ready to release it, and it does it. But for the most part, I don't think that people can tell anymore that something different is going on with me.
Yeah, I remember that. I mean, I went through the same thing. You know, it's like, you know, cycles were hard, and then they got easier, but then randomly my body would dump, and then starting a cycle would be like the greatest thing. I'd be like, oh my God, I'm normal. You know, it's like, and then if I went too far, you know, I'd say, okay, I'm going to keep it going. Of course, you know, I learned that didn't work either. You know, I mean, my goal is always with every client is to teach them the process. You know, you've learned the process. You know now what to do and how to do it. You know, so I love hearing that.
Yeah, I think there's there's got to be a place out there as you and others, you know, start making this more known out there. I just feel like there's a place for people like me who would love to get out there and help more people. I mean, unfortunately, I think you have to get sick and become symptomatic before anybody will even consider what you're saying to them. And I've learned how to just sort of back off. You can tell when a person is ready to get well or not, or you can tell that if someone isn't symptomatic yet, that they're not really interested, and I'm okay with that now. I used to think that I had to push it on people.
Yeah, me too.
But I feel like, there are plenty of people out there now, which as I've gone through this journey, now I have people coming to me saying, wow, how are you doing this? I'm like, you want to hear? and so I've been open to sharing with, I'm a little more selective on who I really, jump in and dive into exactly what is this program that I'm doing and how is it helping me. And so I just think that, people like me really have a desire to get out there and just, raise awareness that, what, you don't have to take drugs to fix those problems. There are other, viable ways better ways of actually getting healthy, and here's how. And it's not going to be easy. It's not the easy road. It's not the magic pill, the magic bullet. It's not that. But if you're willing to, you don't have to be disciplined, but if you can find the determination, you can do this. And so I don't know if you can see this. This is something I found in my mother's home right before she died. When I was cleaning out her house, sorry. And this was sort of the motto of her life, and it's become mine as well. And I don't know if you can see this. I don't know if have you ever seen this?
Never ever give up.
I love that picture. I've seen that before. It's wonderful.
So that was my mom's story and her testimony, and I feel like the key was, as I was watching her literally dying in a nursing home. She was in skilled care, had a giant gaping gangrene wound on her leg. They wanted to amputate it. It just was a really heartbreaking situation. And one of the things my mother never did is she never laid in that bed and she'd be moaning in pain and groaning, and she would never say, God, why? Why does this happen to me? Why this? And you want to just blame this or blame why? God, it's your fault. And she had a message of, she knew that when she left this life, she always believed that she had a special place in heaven, that God had this special place for her to do this special job. And I believe that that's true. I believe that God had that for her, but I also believe that He has that for us here and now. And so I don't ask, God, why? Because I feel like the more we sink into that kind of thinking, the more we want to give up, and the more we just give in to fear, or we give in to, just blaming and saying this isn't really working, this isn't doing any good. But now I ask myself, okay, God, how can you work in and through this situation to make me a better person and give me a better stories that I can tell others?
Kim, what you just said there, when I interview for a client that I'm going to coach, those are the things that I'm looking for. My doctors, we've trained now. Look, through my pain, I'm now coached and trained doctors around the world in this. The world needs what you went through. That's why I thank you for telling your story, because there's so many women, there's so many people out there doing they're like, oh my gosh, that was me. And I'm telling you, you just encourage them more than me. So already you're serving, no doubt. And again, now there's doctors trained in this, with cellular detox, and cellular healing, around the globe because of what I went through. You chose, to take that and say, I'm not going to, you learned it from your mom, I'm not going to just complain, I'm going to push through for answers. I'm going to do whatever it takes. I'm going to live life. I'm telling you, that's the healing attitude. Meredith, we call those 3%ers. Kim Emmerich, you're a 3%er. That's why you are where you are. But, those listening, that's a choice. Being a 3%er, it's a choice. Saying, darn it, you made that choice. That I'm just going to do whatever it takes. And darn it, I'm going to serve God in it. And I'm going to get better from it. And I'm going to make a difference because of it. You made every one of those choices.
Yeah, I was telling Meredith just before this call about how, my journey is a long journey. It's been 10 plus years, and, there are times I go, man, I just wish my journey could have only been 3 years. I wish it could have been 1 year. But you know what? I feel like sometimes, God knows that your journey needs to be, your whole life is your journey. Your story, as long as you're alive, your story continues.
Yeah.
I feel like had we sped up this process, had I met you 5 years ago, I could not have been ready. And so, you say a lot of times trust the process, and just with timing and all that, we have to trust the process, and that whole thing about never giving up. God knows the time frame. He knows the path, and just trust Him and let Him do it. And you don't have to get discouraged if it takes too long. I just feel like as Americans, we just want that pill now. And I know a lot of people watch me struggle through hard times with my health, and I hope that the testimony is that they see that I push through that, and it gets better. And it just I want to encourage people that it gets overwhelming. You go out there and you watch your podcasts, it's just full of so much incredible information, but it can get pretty overwhelming. And I tell people, you know what? Start small. Start small. Cut grains out. Stop drinking soda.
Yeah.
And you'll find that if you don't ever start somewhere, you're never going to go anywhere.
Yeah.
But and that's how it was with me. It was a journey. I had to start. I had to take baby steps.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And now it's not that I'm great or anything like that. Now it's just it took baby steps, and it took a long time for me to develop the discipline in order to be successful. I beat myself up all the time when I would fail. Haven't we all? But you just pick yourself up and you keep going.
Yeah, you said a lot of amazing things. It's like, it takes us 30, 40 years to get sick, and then everyone just wants the pill. I mean, even beyond the medication, they just want the magic supplement, right? It's like, you said it. It's like, look, you did a lot of great dietary changes before you met me. It's like, but yet you still weren't well. It took years to bioaccumulate these toxins. You have been persistent, just never missing it, cycle after cycle, and that's the key. It's like I've done this long enough to know the people who stick it through, just like you did, learn the process, just like you did, realize that healing takes time, just like disease took time, and get the toxins out. The body does the healing. It really does. It's not magic in that sense. That we remove the interference and the body does the healing. Your goiter would never went away. Your thyroid condition, everything, the hormones, it will never change. And Meredith, what do I always say? You won't get well today with today's illnesses with the perfect diet, but you won't get well without a perfect diet. So the diet becomes this thing that's necessary, but in itself, we need to get these toxins out, and you're proof positive of that.
Mm-hmm.
God has a purpose in it for you, those watching this, right? But you have to ask, what is it? You're called to this now. And I probably have that written down somewhere because I literally remember writing it. She is called to this mission.
Yeah, it's like I'm stuck now. I can't get out. It's interesting too, is like you feel so alone in the journey.
Yeah.
And you feel like there's no one else out there like you. But it's, if you stick it out and you hang around long enough, it's like we all have this, similar stories that sort of bind you all together. I'm not alone anymore. I know I'm not alone in this, and it's a beautiful thing. So.
No doubt about it. Tell us a little bit about the fasting, because again, I could look down at my notes here and say, here's one, right? It's like, puffy, chubby fingers went away for the first time during a fast, right? I mean, there were some things that happened. Again, you were the gal who could not eat. I mean, and then you were doing these longer fasts. I remember I put you on a whey water, fast in the beginning, and that was probably pretty traumatic. I don't know, but then it became part of what you did. It became easy for you, right?
Yeah.
Speak to that a little bit.
Yeah, I remember the whey water thing, and I was into that before I even knew you, because the Garden of Life people and Jordan Rubin and all that, and I tried several of them, and I'm so determined. I forced it into my body, and it just wasn't happening.
Yeah.
And then you had me do it. I thought, well, okay, we could, and just, you know, one of the things I like about you is you say, okay, well, if that doesn't work, it's okay. Let's back off on that. Let's try something different.
Yeah.
You know, we did a bone broth fast. I've never felt better in my life, and I had some roadblocks with that. The longer we did it, then we did water, and I can intermittent fast now. I can even do 24 hours. I could do it 2-3 times a week. I rarely get hungry. It's pretty easy. It's so funny. Like my husband will say, "Wow, this diet is really, really expensive. You know, you're buying the raw milk, the grass-fed beef, the pastured, you know, chicken eggs, and the more expensive butter and all that." And I'm like, I don't even eat 2-3 days a week. How can that? I'm making up for it. I'm pretty resourceful, you know. So there's no excuse out there. You can make it work. You can make it happen. You can, you know, if you want, you can pay. You can pay on the, you know, later on when you're in the ICU, you know, or like my mother, who she had to have skilled nursing care past time that Medicare would pay, and then it's $150 a day, you know, out of pocket. And so, you know, if you keep yourself well up front, it's going to pay off.
Always, always. Yeah, that's amazing. I mean, you do what I do. Like I went all day yesterday. I didn't eat at all. Honestly, it was just effortless. You encouraged a lot of people, though, because I know a lot of people watching this show, many of my clients, many of the doctors, you know, that do cellular detox, their clients, go, I can't go without food. I can't go even 14 hours. I get, you know, it's like you started there. It's like now you said it. It's like I can do it several times a week without eating. You know, my wife was that way. You know, it wasn't easy for her at first, you know, but you get more efficient. The body becomes more efficient at using fat for energy, and that's part of the healing. You know, and it's like, but you know, we put it all together, the ancient healing strategies and the detox, and that's what works, right? Meredith, that's part of the multi-therapeutic approach. Right?
Yeah, and that's what I was going to say too, that all of this does fit into the multi-therapeutic approach, the fasting, the detox, the diet changes, supplementation. We haven't really talked a lot about that, and then exercise either, so maybe if you want to hit on those.
Is that for me or is that for Dr.
For you.
For either of you, yeah.
Go ahead.
So what was your experience with the supplements first? Maybe if you want to kind of start there.
Yeah, well, before I met Dr. Pompa, I was highly supplemented, but I was on good supplements because through my chiropractor, we were doing systemic formulas, and it was interesting because I felt like as long as I was doing those, like religiously, I could become pretty asymptomatic on a lot of my symptoms, but as soon as I'm not kidding you, miss a day, symptoms would come right back, and I just knew something wasn't right about that. I can't, you know, go the rest of my life taking all these supplements, and I find it interesting now that as I've been working with Dr. Pompa, the number of supplements, it decreases over time. And there's a lot of changing and switching, but there's also, like I remember I needed so much magnesium that I had to carry around a bottle of liquid magnesium. This is before I met you, Dr. Pompa. I used to carry it around in my car because I would get heart palpitations so severely, and they wouldn't stop, and I would start thinking I was going to pass out, even like while I was driving. And so it was like having an inhaler, like for an asthmatic having an inhaler. I used to take so much magnesium, it was amazing how much I would take. And never have too much of it. And now I don't really take that much, and I very, very rarely ever get a heart palpitation.
Yeah, you know, that's the thing. It's getting upstream, right? I mean, it's just like, you know, people taking all these hormones, you know, whether it's all the supplements. You know, ultimately you remove the upstream cause. In your case, no doubt, lead and mercury had bioaccumulated, you know, deep into the tissue, and you know that messes with magnesium. Does. It depletes magnesium. You can eat all the magnesium you want, but it's not going to stay because the heavy metals compete with the same receptors. You know, so it's like I hope everyone hears the lesson. You know, it's, you know, you were patient enough to get upstream to it. You know, determined enough to get upstream at the real cause of why you have mineral deficiency, why you have hormone trouble, etc. So,
and I think too over this process. I'm sorry, there's a delay, and I may be like interrupting, and I don't do that. I'm sorry. when Meredith was asking about, exercise, there were years that I couldn't do anything. I mean, the time that they said, oh, it's mono, Epstein-Barr virus, I was having a hard time getting out of bed during those days. But then, for someone I was always very active, played sports my whole life, I could barely run for a very long time, and I used to take my kids to the tennis courts and watch them play, and wished so badly that I could be out there. And there were all kinds of things that went through my mind. Oh, I'm just getting too old. I'm in my 40s now. I can't do this. It's just comes with age, and I'm running out on the tennis courts just like I did when I was a teenager. And so it comes back. It all comes back.
I couldn't work out. When I was sick, I couldn't exercise either. It would just leave me more exhausted and, more sleepless nights, honestly. And, I, to this morning, bike 12 miles. It's like, probably I did a climb up this mountain out here. Well, see it. But anyways, and I finished in my age category, in the top 10 of anyone who ever went up that climb. So that was the guy where I started was I could not literally ride my bike down the street without becoming exhausted. And that, I think both of us just gave a lot of people, a lot of hope, honestly. It's like it can't be you. But, honestly, you have to choose it. Honestly, it's not going to come with the magic pill. It's not going to come by just some dietary changes, just that alone. If you see, it took all of these things together, Kim, to get both of our lives back, and that's the magic.
I just want to thank you so much, Dr. Pompa, because, it was very timely. You were a godsend to me, and all the different times in my journey where I just said, God, show me, open the next door. I've tried all these good things, but somehow we just haven't gotten to the core of the issue. And just at the right time, you came along, and I feel like I'm starting to be able to dream again and regain some of the things I've lost, and I'm forever grateful for that. And I just want to thank you so much.
That's what our story brings us, deeper into that service. You know what? And I guarantee you, just this show alone, you're changing lives. And obviously, you have people coming to you now going, so what did you do?
Yeah.
So, Meredith, I think she might be at one of our seminars one day. I think
you might be great on that one.
Sure. Her and her family were clients of mine for years, and now she's a world changer. She's doing this, and she's taking people through cellular detox, and she's an amazing healer today, and she started exactly where you did, Kim. So there's some encouragement.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. And honestly, you already have an amazing background with helping people and in the health field. So God has a purpose.
Yeah, it's interesting because I was gonna go to medical school and become a doctor, and I just thought, I'm just not sure they're doing it the way, I don't want to say the right way, because I'm so grateful for all the great doctors that we have out there. But I just felt like for me there was more to it. I wanted to know, well, why are people getting sick? Why? And if you can't answer why, I'm not satisfied.
Yeah, absolutely. The why, right? My brain automatically asks why. My 12-year-old Simon asked me why so many times in a day that by a certain time in the evening I have to say, okay, no more. No more. So, but asking why is a good thing. Well, Kim, thank you so much for sharing. I told you it takes a lot of guts, to come on here and share your story. And I hope my existing clients and some of our doctors' clients get encouraged and say, okay, I'm going to tell my story too, because we have hundreds of you out there.
Yeah, I might need EMDR after this. We'll see.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Well, thank you, Dr. Pompa, and thank you, Kim, so much for sharing your story. You're true inspiration to us and to all of those who are watching, and just the progress and changes you've made within the multi-therapeutic approach, as we've discussed, that it's really magic, and it's the synergy in doing all of these different strategies, because it's never just one thing. But you stayed course, and you are just on your way. So thanks so much for sharing.
Yeah. Thank God. Thank you, Meredith.
All right. Thanks, everyone, and we'll see you next time. Take care.